Have you ever felt lost? Like you've completely messed up your life's purpose? Maybe you made a huge mistake and had to run away from it all, starting over somewhere new. If that's you, then the story of Moses is one you need to hear. After fleeing Egypt, Moses spent 40 long years as a shepherd in the desert of Midian. He had a wife, a son, a quiet life. The fiery prince of Egypt was gone, replaced by a humble man tending sheep. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the Israelites were suffering immensely under a new Pharaoh. Their cries for help reached God, and he remembered his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. One day, while Moses was leading his flock near Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, he saw something incredible. A bush was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. As he went closer to investigate this strange sight, a voice called out from the flames, "Moses? Moses," he replied, "Here I am." God told him to take off his sandals, because he was standing on holy ground. Then God revealed his plan. He said, "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries, and I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses was floored. "Who? Me?" He immediately started making excuses. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Ask it. It's a relatable feeling, isn't it? Feeling completely inadequate for a big task. But God's answer wasn't about Moses' ability. He simply sighed, "I will be with you." That was the only qualification Moses needed. Still, Moses hesitated. He asked, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" God's reply is one of the most profound statements in all of Scripture. He said to Moses, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." This name, Yahweh, speaks of God's eternal, self-existent nature. He is the ultimate reality, the one who always was, is, and will be. He is not a God made of wood or stone. He is the living God. God then gave Moses detailed instructions. He was to gather the elders of Israel, tell them that the God of their fathers had appeared to him, and that he would rescue them from their suffering and lead them to a land flowing with milk and honey. God even told Moses that Pharaoh would not let them go easily. He would have to perform mighty wonders before the Egyptian king would finally relent. But Moses was still full of doubt. He said, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" So God gave him 3 signs to prove his divine authority. First, God told Moses to throw his staff on the ground. When he did, it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back in fear. Then God told him to pick it up by the tail. As soon as he did, it turned back into a staff. For the second sign, God told him to put his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, it was leprous, as white as snow. Then God told him to put it back in his cloak, and when he took it out again, it was healthy, just like the rest of his skin. As a third sign, God said that if the people still didn't believe him after the first 2, he should take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water would turn into blood. You'd think these powerful signs would be enough, right? But Moses had one more excuse. "Pardon your servant, Lord. I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." Basically, he was sawing, "I'm not a good public speaker." God's response was both powerful and a little impatient. He asked, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." Even after all this reassurance, Moses made one last desperate plea. "Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else." At this, God's anger burned against Moses. But even in his anger, God showed grace. He said, "What about your brother, Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you." So God appointed Aaron to be Moses' spokesman. Moses would tell Aaron what God said, and Aaron would speak to the people and to Pharaoh. God made it clear Moses would still be the leader, holding the staff of God in his hand to perform the signs. So, with his mission finally accepted, Moses returned to his father-in-law Jethro and asked for permission to return to Egypt to see if his people were still alive. Jethro gave him his blessing, saying, "Go in peace." As Moses set out with his wife and sons, God spoke to him again on the journey. He reinforced the mission, telling him, "When you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do." But God also gave him a chilling warning. "But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let the people go." This is a complex part of the story, showing God's sovereignty even over the heart of a stubborn king. God then told Moses to deliver a message to Pharaoh. "This is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you, 'Let my son go, so he may worship me.' But you refused to let him go. So I will kill your firstborn son." This was a powerful foreshadowing of the final, devastating plague. Meanwhile, God also spoke to Aaron. He told him to go into the desert to meet his brother. So Aaron went and met Moses at the mountain of God. Imagine that reunion. After 40 years apart, they met at the very place where God had called Moses. Moses told Aaron everything, all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak and all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Together, the two brothers went back to Egypt. They gathered all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron spoke all the words the Lord had given to Moses and performed the signs in front of everyone. And what happened? The people believed. They saw that God had not forgotten them. When they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. What an incredible story of transformation. A runaway murderer became the chosen deliverer of a nation. A man full of excuses and fear became the instrument of God's mighty power. It shows us that God doesn't call the qualifier. He qualifies the called. He can use anyone, no matter their past mistakes or present insecurities, as long as they are willing to say, "Here I am." Thanks for watching. If this story encouraged you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores these amazing biblical narratives. The very first confrontation between Moses, Aaron, and the mighty Pharaoh of Egypt. This isn't just a story about miracles. It's a story about courage, divine authority, and the beginning of a cosmic showdown. We're going to unpack some fascinating details from Exodus, chapter 7, specifically looking at verses 2, 10, and 12. You might think you know this story, but I promise you, there are layers here that are absolutely mine. So, grab your Bible, a cup of coffee, and let's get into it. To really get the full picture, we need to remember what led up to this moment. Moses, after fleeing Egypt and spending 40 years as a shepherd in Midian, has had a life-altering encounter with God at the burning bush. God has given him an almost impossible task. Go back to the most powerful man on earth, Pharaoh, and demand that he let God's people, the Israelites, go free. Moses is, to put it mildly, hesitant. He's full of self-doubt. He says, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" He worries they won't believe him. He even says he's not a good speaker, that he's slow of speech and of a slow tongue. This is where our first key verse, Exodus 7, verse 2, comes into play. After Moses expresses his insecurities, God gives him a clear and powerful command structure. He says to Moses, "You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land." This is so important. God isn't dismissing Moses' feelings of inadequacy. Instead, he provides a solution. He establishes a divine chain of command. God speaks to Moses, Moses speaks to Aaron, and Aaron speaks to Pharaoh. Think about the dynamics here. Moses becomes God's direct representative, a prophet in the truest sense. The text even says in the previous verse that God has made Moses like God to Pharaoh, with Aaron as his prophet. This isn't saying Moses is divine, but that to Pharaoh, Moses will speak with the full authority and power of God himself. Aaron's role is crucial too. He's the mouthpiece, the public relations man, the one who will articulate the message clearly and boldly. This partnership is a beautiful illustration of how God works through people, using their unique strengths and even providing support for their weaknesses. Moses The hesitant leader is paired with Aaron, the eloquent speaker. Together, they are a complete team, fully equipped for the mission ahead. It's a powerful reminder for us that when God calls us to do something, He doesn't leave us stranded. He provides the resources, the people, and the plan we need to succeed. He doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. So, with their roles defined and their mission clear, Moses and Aaron head to the heart of Egyptian power, the court of Pharaoh. Can you even imagine the tension in the air? The throne room would have been an intimidating spectacle of wealth, power, and pagan symbolism. And in walk these two Hebrew men, an 80-year-old and his 83-year-old brother, with a message from a god Pharaoh doesn't even recognize. This brings us to our second verse, Exodus 7, verse 10. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Let's break this down. The first thing they do is an act of obedience. The text says they did just as the Lord commanded. Their confidence isn't in their own abilities. It's in their obedience to God's instruction. The action itself is a sign, a credential. God had told Moses this would be the sign to authenticate their message. Aaron throws his staff on the ground, and it miraculously transforms into a serpent. The word used here in Hebrew for a serpent is tannin, which can also mean a large sea monster or dragon-like creature. This wasn't just a little garden snake. This was meant to be a display of awesome, terrifying power. Why a serpent? In ancient Egypt, the serpent, particularly the cobra, was a powerful and complex symbol. The uraeus, an upright cobra, was a symbol of royalty, deity, and divine authority. It was worn on the pharaoh's crown, representing his power and his connection to the gods. So when Aaron's staff becomes a serpent, it's a direct challenge to Pharaoh on his own turf, using his own symbolism. It's as if God is saying, "You think your serpent represents power? Let me show you what real power looks like." This isn't just a random magic trick. It's a targeted, symbolic declaration of war against the gods of Egypt and the divine authority of Pharaoh himself. God is meeting the Egyptian empire at the very source of its perceived power and demonstrating that he is superior. Now, Pharaoh's reaction is exactly what you'd expect from an arrogant, powerful ruler. He's not impressed. He thinks this is just a parlor trick. So, he calls in his own experts, the wise men, the sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians. And this leads us to the climax of this first encounter, which is beautifully and terrifyingly captured in our final verse for today. Exodus, see at the verse 12. For each man cast down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. This verse is absolutely chilling and packed with meaning. First, the Egyptian magicians are able to replicate the miracle. Their staffs also turn into serpents. The Bible doesn't shy away from this. It acknowledges that there is a real, albeit limited, spiritual power that opposes God. Whether this was a sleight of hand, a form of hypnotism, or a genuine demonic manifestation, the effect was the same. From a purely visual standpoint, it looked like a tie. For a moment, it seems like Pharaoh's power is on par with the God of the Hebrews. He probably felt smug, thinking, "See, my guys can do that too. Your God is nothing special." But then, the game changes. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. This is the mic drop moment. This is the divine checkmate. The confrontation moves from simple transformation to a battle for dominance, and there is no contest. The serpent from God's power doesn't just defeat the other serpents, it consumes them. It completely and utterly annihilates them. The symbolism is undeniable. The power of the God of Israel is not just one among many. It is supreme and absolute. It doesn't just coexist with other powers. It devours them. The message to Pharaoh is crystal clear. Your gods, your magic, your authority, your entire worldview is about to be consumed by the one true God. This single act sets the stage for everything that follows. It's the opening salvo in a series of 10 plagues, each one designed to systematically dismantle a different aspect of Egyptian religion and society. The swallowing of the staffs is a prophecy in miniature of what's to come. Just as Aaron's staff swallowed the magician's staffs, God's power will ultimately swallow up the power of Pharaoh and all of Egypt, leading to the liberation of his people. What can we take away from this incredible story today? First, God honors obedience. Moses and Aaron simply did what God told them to do, and God showed up in power. Second, we see that we shouldn't be surprised when the world tries to imitate or counterfeit God's power. There will always be opposing forces and ideologies that seem impressive on the surface. But third, and most importantly, God's power is supreme. It's not just a little bit stronger. It's in a completely different category. It is absolute. And in the end, it will consume all opposition. This story in Exodus 7 is a profound source of encouragement when we face our own pharaohs, be it situations that seem impossible, systems that feel oppressive, or personal struggles that feel overwhelming. We can remember this moment. We can remember that the God we serve doesn't just compete with the powers of this world. He swallows them whole. We are on the side of the serpent that wins. What an incredible passage. It's so much more than a children's story. It's a theological statement about the nature of God and his supreme authority over all creation. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these verses in the comments below. What stands out to you the most? Thanks so much for watching and for digging into the Word with me today. If you found this valuable, please give the video a like and consider subscribing for more content. We're going back to ancient Egypt, a land of towering pyramids and mighty pharaohs, to witness a spectacular showdown between a stubborn king and the God of the Israelites. This is the story of the first 3 plagues. Our story begins with Moses and his brother Aaron standing before the mighty Pharaoh. God has sent them with a simple but powerful message. Let my people go. The Israelites have been enslaved in Egypt for generations, and their cries for freedom have reached the heavens. But Pharaoh, whose heart is hardened, refuses. He sees the Israelites as nothing more than his personal labor force, essential for building his grand cities and monuments. He is not about to let them go just because 2 men show up with a message from a God he doesn't recognize or respect. So, God decides it's time for a demonstration of power. A series of signs and wonders that will leave no doubt about who is truly in charge. The stage is set at the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt. The river is everything to the Egyptians. It irrigates their crops, provides drinking water, and is considered a source of divine blessing. Following God's command, Aaron takes his staff and strikes the water of the Nile in full view of Pharaoh and his officials. Instantly, something unimaginable happens. The life-giving water turns into blood. Not just red-colored water, but actual blood. The entire river, from its source to its delta, becomes a river of blood. And it doesn't stop there. All the water in Egypt and Tekenos ponds, and even in the wooden and stone water jars inside people's homes, turns to blood. The stench is unbearable. The fish in the river die, adding to the putrid smell that fills the air. The Egyptians can't drink from their river anymore. They are forced to dig along the banks of the Nile, desperately searching for drinkable water. Imagine the panic and chaos. Their most sacred and vital resource has become a source of death and decay. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a direct assault on the Egyptian way of life and their gods, particularly Hapi, the god of the Nile. Now, what does Pharaoh do? Does he see this as a sign to let the Israelites go? Not at all. He calls in his own magicians, the wise men and sorcerers of his court. And believe it or not, using their secret arts, they manage to replicate the miracle on a smaller scale. They also turn water into blood. Seeing this, Pharaoh's heart becomes even harder. He dismisses Moses and Aaron, turns his back, and returns to his palace, unimpressed. In his mind, if his own people can do it, it's not a sign from an all-powerful God. It's just a magic trick. The plague of blood lasts for 7 long days, a constant, stinking reminder of God's power. Yet Pharaoh's resolve only with the water still tainted. God sends Moses back to Pharaoh with another warning. Let my people go. If you refuse, I will plague your whole country with frogs. Again, Pharaoh refuses. So, God instructs Aaron to stretch his staff over the waters of Egypt, the rivers, canals, and ponds. Suddenly, An unbelievable wave of green emerges from the water. Frogs. Millions of them. They swarm out of the Nile and cover the land. They are everywhere. They hop into the palaces, into the bedrooms, onto the beds. They get into the ovens and kneading troughs, contaminating the food. There is no escape. The constant croaking, the slimy feel, the sheer number of them would have been an absolute nightmare. This plague is a direct mockery of Hecate, the Egyptian goddess of fertility, who was often depicted with the head of a frog. The very symbol of life and creation was now a source of torment. This time, the plague is too much for Pharaoh to ignore. He can't eat, sleep, or walk without encountering a frog. His own magicians are able to summon more frogs with their secret arts. But here's the crucial difference. They can't get rid of them. They can only make the problem worse. Their power is limited to imitation, not restoration. Finally, Pharaoh cracks. He summons Moses and Aaron and makes a plea. "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people," he says, "and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." For the first time, Pharaoh acknowledges the Lord by name. Moses agrees. He even gives Pharaoh the honor of setting the time for when the frog should be removed, to prove that this is no coincidence. Pharaoh, perhaps wanting one more night of relief, says, "Tomorrow." So, Moses prays to God, and just as he promised, the next day, the frogs die. They die in the houses, in the courtyards, and in the fields. The Egyptians piled them up into huge heaps, and the land reeks with the smell of decaying frogs for days. But what happens once the relief comes? As soon as Pharaoh has a moment to breathe, his old stubbornness returns. Seeing that the plague is over, he hardens his heart once again and breaks his promise. He refuses to let the people go. His word means nothing. This sets the stage for the third plague. God doesn't even send a warning this time. He simply tells Moses to have Aaron strike the dust of the ground with his staff. Aaron doth, and as the staff hits the dust, all the dust throughout the land of Egypt turns into gnats. Or some translations say lice. Tiny, biting insects that swarm over people and animals. Imagine a cloud of relentless, biting bugs that you can't escape. They are on your skin, in your hair, in your eyes. This plague was different. It came without warning, and it was intensely personal, affecting every single person and animal. It was a form of constant, irritating torture. This is where things get really interesting. Pharaoh calls his magicians, expecting them to replicate this plague just as they did with the others. But this time, they fail. They try with all their secret arts to produce gnats, but they can't. They are powerless. Humbled and defeated, the magicians go to Pharaoh and deliver a stunning verdict. Tetelim, this is the finger of God. They finally recognize that they are dealing with a power far beyond their own. They admit that this isn't a trick, it's a divine act. You would think this would be the final straw for Pharaoh. His own experts are telling him he's fighting against God himself. But what does he do? Exodus tells us, Pharaoh's heart was hard and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said. He ignores his own advisors. He digs in his heels even deeper. The testimony of his own trusted magicians means nothing to him. So, here we are, after 3 devastating plagues. The river of life turned to blood. The land overrun by a disgusting swarm of frogs. And now, the people and animals tormented by clouds of gnats. Each plague was a direct challenge to the gods of Egypt and the authority of Pharaoh. And with each plague, Pharaoh's defiance only grew stronger. His pride and stubbornness are blinding him to the reality of the power he is up against. This is just the beginning of the story. 7 more plagues are still to come, each one more severe than the last. Pharaoh's hardened heart will bring unimaginable suffering upon his own people, all because he refuses to humble himself and obey the command to let the people go. It's a powerful lesson about pride, obedience, and the overwhelming power of God. Thanks for watching and joining me on this journey through Exodus. What do you think about Pharaoh's response? Let me know in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next part of this incredible story. We'll see you in the next one.